Rebekah Martin went to Africa, and Frank Sutton, a couple of weeks before that, or right about that same time, went to Trinidad, and we supported them both in our congregation, and they went on these mission trips. Joe and Rebekah, of course, have gone to Africa 9,952 times. But every time they go, God does miraculous things. And if we didn't allow them to stand up and tell us what was going on, that would be terrible. Because we need to know what's happening in Africa. And so we're excited to have them come and share. And we're going to have them come and share first. Frank is his second trip to Trinidad, so he'll tell us about that a little bit. So Joe and Rebekah, come on up and just share with us what's going on in Africa. And this part right here, these are the messages today. So let's give them a hand as they come up too. Is this on?
Morning, everybody. This is my 20th time. I think Rebekah's gone 25 times or something, but Pastor Dave said about 15 minutes, and I think that's a good summary. So we're going to walk through some slides, and the theme this time is Go Fish. And I appreciated what was said in the Sunday school class this morning, the Diving Deeper class. You try to go where the fish are, and Africa is just booming. And I remember one time, you go global, but you start local. There are fish in your neighborhood as well. You need to be building relationships in your neighborhood and talking to your neighbors and drawing them close to Jesus and the kingdom itself. So, Dave, you may have to prompt me on this.
We didn't go to Kenya this year. We just went to Malawi and Mozambique, and we generally go for a much longer period of time, but we were just gone for 2 weeks this time. Actually, we just went to Malawi. We had the Mozambique people come over and meet us in Malawi, just right across the border. And it was a great trip. I really feel like God's presence was with us. It was very encouraging to the people there. They've gone through, some of you know, some of you may not know, they've gone through some just terrible devastation this year. In January and February, within a week or 2 week period, there were 2 cyclones that went through those countries, and it was during their monsoon season, and there was just horrible destruction. A lot of homes were destroyed. Some whole villages were just washed away. A lot of people lost everything. A lot of people just had a wall fall down in their house. We met a widow in Blantyre. It lives up on the side of a mountain where a lot of people live up there. But the winds were so strong. They came through like at 4:30 or 5 in the morning, the cyclones did. And she and her husband were sleeping, and a wall fell in and it hit him. It didn't hit her, and he was killed. And their house was basically destroyed. So that's lots of stories like that.
There's a lot of stuff we do. There are about 300 churches that we fellowship, and Rick McLean is here, and he's in charge of the General Conference Mission Sending Board, and Rebekah's on that. So one of the first things we do is we buy a bunch of Bibles. If you notice, there's a bunch of money on the table. This is the Malawi Bible Society. We bought about 220 Bibles this time, but we think the Word is the most important. People will, if nothing else, can read the Word and draw close to Jesus and the kingdom through that. So those are just boxes of book. I think there are 24 Bibles in each of those boxes, and we made 2 loads on that. And one thing we do is, this is kind of funny, we were in a restaurant at Malonji Mountain. It's so beautiful, and you'll see the setting in just a minute. I got the Mozambique pastors, and we kind of took over the little restaurant there and just started a Bible stamping program.
But there was no one else in there. There was nobody else in there, so it was okay to take over.
Anyway, it was a lot of fun. The guys are really good. There's a guy named Pastor Neva Sandi, and he was just stamping Bibles all the way and all the time. As you go through Africa, you see a lot of the devastation that happened, and to explain that is kind of hard for builders. They use adobe brick. So this is mud brick, and then they put in the villages at least, adobe or mud mortar, and so you have mud on mud basically. And this is a building from the north. This is the north wall. And when the monsoons came and it flooded, and the rain gets on the mortar and goes down, the first place to go is the bottom, and the bottom collapses, and as you can see from that video, falls in, and that's where we had that person die.
We bought, we bought several bales. We bought actually 9 bales of clothing because a lot of people lost everything. This is their winter, and they were cold. The bales weigh about 200 pounds each. And Linda is the person on the far left. She's our helper over in Malawi. And we actually sent the money ahead of time, and she bought the clothes for us and had different pastors' wives come and help separate them into packs so that we were able to give clothes to all of the congregations that we have over there. And we also were able to get some food packets there. We bought 100 food packets from Malawi and 100 from Mozambique, and that consists of a bag of maize flour and some dried beans and salt. And you can see the sizes of the packs here. I can't remember exactly how many kilograms it was.
About 25 pounds of flour, corn flour. By the way, they do maize flour, cornmeal, and then the beans was about 10 pounds and things like that. Oh, you can kind of see the beans are on top and the flour is down below. And I know that's not going to go a long ways in severe trouble, but they see what we're trying to do, and they are very appreciative of that. We've really got a lot of thank yous to LHI and thank you to the churches, and and some of these guys, I'll just back up one. That's Pastor Fabiano Bongo. He's kind of the bishop of Mozambique, and Taliana Chaka and Nevasandi, and we know these guys now for 20 years. They got a good heart. They got great hearts, and they just go with the flow.
Before you're done with that, I just want to say one more thing about the food packets. Everybody over there is hungry. Their gardens were washed away, and there's going to be a big famine. They're hungry now. And when we were giving these food packs, what we did actually is we gave them to the board members in Mozambique and in Malawi, and they're going to give them to the most needy in their countries that are in our church. But they told us that they needed to get them at night, and they would have to do it under the cover of darkness, or they would be attacked and killed and the food taken away. So that's just how dangerous the situation is right now.
There are some areas in the north of Malawi that are pretty dry, so it might be a mile or two to the river, so they do baptistries. This is one of the baptistries in Balaka. Another big issue is inflation and money. The Malawi kwacha, MK, is 723 kwacha per liter. And so aren't there like 4 liters? So this is like $7 a gallon. This is not like going down to the racetrack and buying it for $2.50 or something. They are hurting in many multiple ways. Just for Jerry's sake and Mitch, who played a bass, this is a homemade bass and drum. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a string on the top of that. They do both with that.
And if you look on the far left, there's a symbol on it too. Can you see that little metal thing? Dave, I think you actually saw this. Yeah.
So anyway, they make do with what they have, and just a box with a string and a cymbal and
make good music out of it.
Yeah, man, Josh has nothing on these guys. Sorry, Josh. You got nothing on these guys. They're thumping the bass, and they're hitting the cymbal, and they're playing the string as well. And you always have the kids. Anytime you show up, and a lot of people say in 20 years, Africa is going to exceed India and China in terms of population. Wouldn't it be right for us to focus on trying to help them out and go that way? Anytime you get a camera up, they come rushing. This
is Linda, and she's our coordinator in both Malawi and in Mozambique. She lives in Malawi. underwent treatment for cancer, and I think starting in January of 2014. She's now through with all the chemo and radiation therapy. She lost all her hair. She's so happy to have hair again. She's doing well. She still has to kind of take it easy some, but she's really doing well. And I honestly don't know how we would do the work over there without her. She keeps us informed of things and organizes. So thanks.
Dave knows Pastor Goodson Majeri. He's just the most bubbly guy. He says, Joe, we want you and Rebekah to come to this church. We're going to another church on Sunday morning. Come by this one. So we want you to bless the marriage. I said, okay, whatever that is, I'll come by and bless the marriage. Come to find out, I was supposed to perform the ceremony for this couple. Impromptu marriage right away, so that was kind of funny. This is Africa. Just get up and I'm trying to do you take this woman whose hand you now hold to be your lawful? I'm just trying to remember all that stuff.
And they don't speak English.
So we're translating that in the process, and just getting them to face each other and hold hands is kind of funny as it goes too. Tim, this would be interesting to you. Inflation, the Malawi kwacha was 40 to $1 20 years ago. And now it's 485 kwacha to her dollar. So that's about $100 on Rebekah's bed. No, but when you cash $1,000, for instance, you got all of this paper, and it's just useless. Not useless, but look at,
And the thing is, you have to count it all, because even if you get it from the bank, they don't always put the right amount in there. It's just, you're half your life counting money.
Just a reminder that Islam is on the move in Malawi and Mozambique too, and we have several new mosques being built in some of our church areas. This is kind of the beauty of the situation at the Mozambique border, and I know Jim and Martha, this is one of their favorite places, Malonji View Motel, and that scene there we've taken many times, but that's us meeting with them. Just now, remember, you drive on the left side of the road. And so when you get to Malawi, and I did most driving, for the first day you say, keep left, keep left, keep left. And I was driving down this road on a 2.5 hour, not far, church. Yeah. And then I said, whoa, I want to take a picture of that little pothole when we come back. But it would have swallowed up the whole, if we would have been driving at night, that would have swallowed the truck up. So that's a result of some of the flooding.
This is a church. This was actually the first service we had. It was with most of the Mozambique pastors that crossed the river, and they came over here to Pastor Namaona's church. That's his wife Gracie that I have my arm around, and they are
Bibles on them.
Yeah, there's Bibles and tracts, and we bought tablets for them to write in and stuff.
That would be a typical Malawi church. Just we try to provide tin rather than straw, but I do have a picture of a straw roof later on. You have to be, you're out in the boonies. We drove 2.5 hours on a hard dirt road, and so you have to be ready. This is our little truck, by the way, that the South Carolina folks bought for us, and
that TIA is, we always have to expect the unexpected, because it always happens. So this is Africa. So when something like, we don't want to offend anybody, so when something happens and it's just like, oh, another thing, we just say TIA. So.
You always see something strange. This was a tree, the dirt had been washed away, and Rebekah, I said, take a picture of that, man. I've never seen that. And of course you start to take a picture and the kids run up, right? It's like 10 seconds and you have 20 kids there taking pictures. This is a normal village building. It's a thatched roof with just kind of bamboo sides, but they will fit 200 people in that and not even think about it. And for the young people, this is their youth group choir, and that guy on your right has a homemade guitar. And so that's about it, and Dave's going to have questions later.
And they are all very musically talented. They really do a great job. Thanks.
We could talk all day about that. So let's thank them for sharing with us. Frank, come here, Frank. Frank's going to share a little bit about Trinidad, so I'm excited to hear this.
Well, this was my second year. It was a little bit harder because Randy wasn't there this year. He usually makes things easier for me. But this is our team that we started with in Atlanta. Of course, the team got bigger once we got there. I didn't spend any time with VBS this year because they separated us from the work crew and the VBS. But the work we had was pretty significant. It was tight quarters, and you don't have a lot of tools or access to different things that you might need, like we take for granted a hardware store, Lowe's. We might have to travel 45 minutes just to get some screws, and then come back and say we forgot something. But I think I spent most of my time, usually about 7:30 in the morning. The sun's up at 6, like up in the air, hot, 6 o'clock. So you're awake without an alarm clock. And you're working 10, 12 hours a day, and then you get home, and it's like, and this is where we stayed. This is a camp facility. It's on a church campground that missionaries would utilize. They could house anywhere from 2 to 4 different mission groups at one time. We had the whole upstairs because we had a lot of people, but it was nice, and it was all gated. Everything there is gated. Every house has its own gate, has its own concrete wall. And of course, I had one day in which I was asked to climb a tree and get mangoes for the 2 pastors. Mangoes are, they're not hard to come by, but if you don't have a mango tree in your yard, you have to wait to get your mangoes. And we were fortunate to have one, and everybody was, for the next 2 days, eating mangoes. But, and there they are. They're down there waiting for us to throw them down to them. But the work, we have the kind of different blocks. They're made of clay, and they're real soft. And nobody knows how to throw bricks. And the guy that's up there working with me his name is David, and he was the only guy that I had to help me work. And we're closing in the soffit. There's a lot of bats and birds and other animals. Lizards are as big as iguanas there. But and actually one chased me out of the back of the church one day. But we set up, and we have to tear down the old soffit and brick it up, and it took us about almost 2 days to do one side. And we had help, but obviously there was a couple of older fellows, and all they did was clean up our mess. Whatever we were dropping, they were just behind us shoveling, picking up. And if it wasn't for those guys, we would have never been able to accomplish what we needed to, because we knew that we had to keep the church clean. So the sense of getting the work done was kind of high priority, and it was definitely a learning process, but it was every day. David worked on one section, I'm working on one section, and we're trying to get this stuff in, and then of course it has to be floated in and nice and smooth, because they make nice smooth walls on everything. But it was hot, and this is the other side of the building. This was not fun at all, because when you got in that little hole, you stayed there, and you had to yell down to somebody to say, "This is what I need," and you just kind of scooted over. And there's the roof from someone taking pictures up there. These guys, they just kind of let things go until it absolutely, positively has to be done, and then they might be able to get it done if they have enough people to get it done. This is their first projector. We had taken a projector to hook up for them. Had to do some wiring for that, and that took half a day. Then of course we had to paint the wall to accommodate the projector, because it was a green wall, and they weren't doing movies, so had fixed doors. I guess it was like a Wednesday or Thursday. We had to drill a hole in concrete. That's their trash basket. And this is what the church, they throw it out, trash truck comes by, picks it up, and if you have more than that, then they start haggling. They say, they want more money, they take more stuff. If you don't have money, then you stay. That's something unique. That is called pig fat. Yeah. And all the fruits and vegetables, they are phenomenal. I mean, I can't tell you how much better a mango tastes there than it does here, or vegetables and all these different things. Well, I was riding down the road with a couple of gentlemen, and he said, stop. Opens the door, and he just starts raking the tree of all this stuff, and just throwing it in the seat. And he says, you got to try one of these. You got to try one of these. I tried one, and I'm trying to figure out what flavor I'm tasting, and I don't taste any flavor. And he goes, these are the most, everybody eats these things. I'm like, but why? They have no flavor. They taste like nothing. And they just kind of laughed at me because it tastes like nothing, and yet they're eating these things all the time. It's like the little candy in their pocket. They see a tree and they'll fill their pockets up and they just eat them when they're walking down the road. But that was really weird, though, because, like I said, everything tastes so good. But when I tasted that, it tasted like nothing. But so most of my time was spent from about 8 o'clock in the morning until about 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the afternoon, laying brick every day. And then doing the little odd and end stuff in between, painting the walls, fixing doors. And I was the only one that really could help coordinate the other people. So not only am I trying to coordinate these guys, even our team that was there, they weren't very skilled in their labors, but they were very passionate about wanting to help. So I said, these are the things you guys can do, and it would help me, so I could do the brick. This was our VBS team. Our VBS team was about an hour and a half east of where we were working at this church, and I went out on Sunday, on the first Sunday we were there, and the church, the only people who were there were us. But once Pastor Garth started singing, and they had music coming, it was like the children were coming out of the trees. I mean, they just came. And it was almost like they knew, like, with the camera, they all come out. But when they hear singing coming out of a church building, all the children come. And then the parents, you might have parents that follow behind. But, the VBS team, they did a lot of good work. And they had, in this little building, which is probably half the size of this, no, it's not even half the size, smaller than that. They had over 40 children packed in to that one building every day. And they had just that VBS team. I had a lot of people to help, but behind there is what we would call a pasture or a field. They call everything a savanna. So they would take them out and do, part of their VBS would be doing a sport. Of course, you can't do a sport that we do because they don't understand baseball or football, but so you have to get out, somebody brings in a soccer ball, and they would play soccer and then come back in and do more VBS. But it was kind of unique because there's a Catholic church that's about a mile up the road, and on a Sunday after church, we walked the streets trying to get people to show up for church on Sunday, for the next Sunday, and show the kids for VBSs for this week, and there wasn't a lot of people to be seen. So I didn't really get to communicate with the VBS team as much, but I said, why don't you just start your day with singing? And I said, you're going to have the kids coming, just like they did on Sunday. So every morning they started their singing, the kids came, and it just every day got more kids, and it turned out to be pretty good for the VBS. We got all of our work done for the labor on the church. It was kind of intense. The mosquitoes are like birds out there. They hurt. They sting when they bite. But like in Africa, they're huge. But you just as developed as Trinidad might be, you would think, it really isn't as developed. Because, like I said, things are just so far apart. Everything takes an hour to get to, and nobody's in a hurry. And one of the things that I really enjoyed, and I really picked up on it this year more than last, was when we honk our horn here at someone cutting us off, driving faster than us, turning when they're not supposed to, it doesn't necessarily mean good things. But over there, if you hear a horn honk, it's a thank you, it's you're welcome. Nobody honks the horn unless they're giving to another driver. Everybody is very polite when they drive. And they have to be, because there's no road rules. There's not a speed limit. Stop signs and red lights are optional. But they always say wait 5 to 10 seconds after the light changes red, just to make sure that somebody else isn't coming. But it was kind of a hard trip, just because, like I said, I was the only one from our church. I had Randy last year, made it a little bit easier for me because I had somebody to talk to. And I had to make new friends with our new VBS team. They're from Central Georgia. But the relationships that I had started last year were actually a lot better this year. They kind of look forward to next year. So that kind of made things a little easier and more appreciative. But I can't thank enough for the people that have supported me and my family, and prayers and thoughts. All those were weighing heavy on my mind, because I know that my wife needed prayers with 2 kids and the traveling she was doing while I was in Trinidad. But it was a great trip.
It's good to see Frank get up here, and that takes a lot just to share about the trip. And I'm thankful that people are willing to go. Amen to that. And I asked Frank, and I asked, Joe and Rebekah, I'm not going to ask them a lot of questions, or any questions really right now, but I'm going to say, if God leads you to something and you don't think you can, if Frank can do it, anybody can do it. I'm just kidding about that. But the truth is, Frank would tell you, you can do it, you'll be blessed. Now, God doesn't call everybody to go to Trinidad or Africa or Mexico or around the world to do missions things. You should fish right here. But sometimes God calls us to fly and fish. Fly fishing, that's what I call it. And if God leads you to that, and if you tell him no, you're not in good standing with God. When he calls you, say yes. And then go ask Frank and Joe and Rebekah, what do I do next? And there's lots of people who have gone on mission trips in our church, and you get more than you give. We'll help you get there. We won't send you totally, you got to raise some of your own money, but we will help you get wherever you want to go if you come to us and say, we want to go on a mission trip. I want to go on a mission trip. If we can, we will help you. So I want to encourage you after church to come up. We'll just ask Joe and Rebekah and Frank to kind of hang around up front. Come up and ask them more about their trip. Ask them about, some of the details or some of the things that were important, and they'll talk to you, and I think that's exciting. Next week, we're going to continue our Go Fish series, and I'm going to be preaching about fish guts. Fish guts. So don't miss that. And there's going to be, it's about what do you do with people that you don't want to be around. So we'll talk about that.